I was that kid, that adult that could take any test, any exam. At the most, I would study a couple hours before the exam, and I was that kid that could ace my exams. I went to class every day. I took great notes, but I wasn't that kid who had to study throughout the semester. And the same thing applied when I went to law school. Um, while I was in law school, the onset of mental illness happened for me. And that changed everything for me, because my ability to focus, my ability to attend class regularly, my ability to care, to be engaged, to enjoy school and learning the way I had been enjoying it was destroyed. And for me, not knowing what was going on, um, not knowing the impact of some traumas that I had experienced as a child and during the summer break during law school, not knowing the impact of why I was dissolving, why things had gotten out of control, including just the onset of the bipolar disorder becoming a illness, not even knowing that I had it for a while, more than likely, but also a eating disorder getting out of control. Um, I didn't know how much of a problem I had until it was time to take finals. And I remember it was December 2002, and I had planned to study for a week for my law school finals. Because you didn't take a final every day. So for that week, it would be law school finals. So it would be one at a time. And I would give myself 2 days for exam. I figured undergrad was 2 hours. Law school at least deserved 2 days. And I had learned a method from my first year of studies of how to cultivate even my method to what made sense. And I realized no matter how hard I tried to sit down and read the material, I wasn't taking it in. I couldn't remember anything. And law school, not all the law school exams, most of them were not rote memory. It was more about thought process. But I couldn't focus. I couldn't put my thoughts together. And the one thing that my whole life I had been able to rely on had been my brain. And that was not working, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I the day before the first exam, I didn't know what to do, and I had already been having thoughts of suicide, and I had already been doing things to hurt myself, and I had already been completely closed off and shut off to friends and family for a couple months by then. I didn't know what to do, so I went to a friendly dean at the law school, and I said to her, I told her how my brother had been injured in a shooting in the summer, right before law school started, and how my dad had gotten sicker, and how I didn't know what was going on for me, and I haven't been able to keep any material to frame it or put it together or to prepare, and I can't take my exams. Can I get a delay? I didn't even know how to ask for that because I never had that problem, other than I've been sick before, like like a cold, and I might have just said, can I take my exams on Monday instead of Friday in undergrad? But the dean she probably asked me a few more questions, but what she did was say, hey, I'd like to call a friend, and if it's okay, I'd like to call the director of the counseling center and see if he could talk to you. And I think if I had been um, well, I know in the past as a kid, whenever that would come up because a family member was seeing a therapist, I always was like, I'll never see one of those because they'll just attack me and say I'm a bad person and everything's my fault in this person's life. So, but none of that was there. I was desperate. And I had trusted this friendly dean, who had just always just been nice and smiled. And I never had a class with her initially, but but there was I forgot what our formal relationship at that time was, but I trusted her enough to make that call, and she sent me right over. And I walked into the counseling center and they give me this form and they're like, can you fill this out? And I fill the form out, and it's asking, have you ever been things like sexually assaulted or abused or molested? And I'm like, yes. Do you struggle with thoughts of hurting yourself? Yes. Have you ever like harmed yourself, like things, I guess, like cutting? I don't remember specific words. And I was like, yes. And then it was like, have you ever watched or had a trauma happen to you or a family member? And I'm like, yes. And they're saying, do you struggle with food related issues? Like, do you not eat food or eat food and throw up or overexercise? I'm like, yes. Are you having trouble focusing and concentrating, sleeping and all this stuff? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I'm just checking the boxes off, checking the boxes off. And then I hand the form in, and then I'm terrified. I'm like, what is this going to look like? And so I meet my one of the main people for really critical person for really helping uh, to save my life. And I meet Dr. R. Kelly Crace. And I just remember the first meeting. I don't remember everything about it, but I do remember some key things. I remember how kind his eyes were. I remember that, and how kind his smile was, and how he shook my hand when we first met. And I also remember sitting there and him asking me, well, how are you doing? And I just dissolved. I was crying and I was upset and I melted. Everything that had happened over the summer and the next months, that with the memories of trauma just falling off the shelves, like all that just came rushing back in over those months. And me engaging in bulimia and just everything, and not understanding what was going on. I just cried and I just was blubbering. And he gave me that space to cry. He didn't say, oh, don't worry, everything's gonna be okay. He just listened to me not really saying anything. And the only thing I remember was he kept like rescheduling some appointments for that day. Because I remember he would say, give me 1 second. And I could hear him rescheduling appointments. And I'd even laugh because I'm like imagining what I'm looking like. Somebody just saying hello. And you're like, what? And so I remember that was the first day of therapy for me in December 2002. It lasted hours of me just crying, and then being able to not even try to, I don't even recall if we figured out a plan about finals. I didn't take them until I didn't take them until I came back. Like I took a break or something and took a incomplete and came back and took them. But I don't remember what we talked about, whether or not that was the second or third meeting. But I saw him for a good amount of time. And I can't even tell you what happened next, like what the next couple weeks were like. But I just know that that was the first day I met the best person in the world for me that day, who I always say, because of words he said, held on to my hope, and at some point hoped I would be able to take that, um, be able to hold my own hope, but he held it for me. So I just remember that as the first day of therapy for me. Thank you.